If you own Bitcoin or any other crypto really, you should be excited for the Bitcoin ETF being approved, because if Bitcoin rises up, especially with this huge catalyst of an ETF being approved, it takes along with it oftentimes altcoins, poo coins, meme coins, and you and I's favorite degen NFTs and coins. And so is this ETF going to be approved? Well, a lot of people think so.
Is it going to be approved?
Yeah, it's going to get approved. We actually think, we're partnered with Invesco on an application. We think it happens this year in 2023. All the indications of dealing seem to be heading in the right direction.
He thinks it's this year, and I hope so, because I've been holding through this cold and barren crypto winter.
Mike, people are going to say he's talking his book. He owns a lot of Bitcoin. He wants this to happen, obviously. What would you pinpoint and specifically suggest that you're seeing around the approval process that is somehow different today than it was a year ago, than it was 2 or 3 years ago?
The most significant piece was the SEC lost in court.
He's referring to when SEC lost in court against Ripple, and they lost their case, and they're refusing to appeal the case. And so he's saying, like, okay, this is a huge catalyst for Bitcoin and crypto in general.
The judge has said, what are you talking about, SEC? You have a futures ETF and you're saying you can't have a cash ETF. That makes intellectually zero sense. And I think that put the SEC on the back foot. And I think Gensler needs a win. There's a tremendous amount of pressure to do something that is rational. The American public wants this. BlackRock, who's the largest asset manager in the world, is out publicly saying we're going to get this done. And it's, I can't talk specific about conversations our guys are having, and, that's on the Invesco side. But talking to all the other people, it just feels like the dialogue with the SEC is all heading in the right direction.
So he's making the case that everyone already knows that it's coming. Everyone's talking along this way. It's just bound to happen, especially this year. But is this a buy the rumor, sell the news situation? At the same time, I think it's still Bitcoin. Like, even if you buy a little high, it's still Bitcoin. The price point for Bitcoin is not 30 grand or 40 grand or 50 grand. It's much, much higher. It's probably in the six figures when what everyone is thinking the price of Bitcoin is really worth.
Have you seen a shift, a fundamental shift in the way the SEC, anecdotally, I imagine, would have to be the only way you'd know this, has changed the approach to thinking about this in light of that lawsuit, which is to say, Lena Khan has lost lawsuits before, in her agency at the FTC. That hasn't shifted the way she thinks about antitrust regulation in the United States.
Yeah, just the public filings back and forth and the comments you're reading online. The people's comments are much more constructive, and when you go to the comment period, what they're asking about all seems much more specific than general, and that seems to be a good sign. We'll see. I don't have a crystal ball. This is my intuition.
Right.
So he's talking about anecdotal, just like his feel, just the conversation and feel of everything, and his intuition. And just to be fair, we do not like Novograt's intuition, especially with his infamous Terra Luna tattoo on the side of his arm. That's probably why he's wearing these big old sweaters, because he doesn't want people to remember just how big of a rug pull Terra Luna was and how he staked his flag on it. I mean, it was a terrible call, and his intuition is very, 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 very sketchy.
The market will head higher on any positive news, right? You're going to have Invesco's Salesforce, BlackRock Salesforce, Cathie Wood's Salesforce, Fidelity Salesforce, all out selling Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has always been an instrument that is sold, not bought, right? It's getting people in the first time, explaining to them what it is. I think by far the most bullish thing that happened was Larry Fink on TV saying, don't worry about that rumor where Bitcoin's going up, because people see it as a store of value and as a flight to quality asset. That's the largest asset manager in the world. And it's no longer talking about how it works or why it's important. It's just a recognized macro asset. And that's a huge psychological shift.
He might have terrible intuition, but he does have a point here. There are a lot of people, BlackRock, ARK Invest, a lot of huge investors who are looking at Bitcoin ETFs and are excited about it. And speaking of her, let's talk about Cathie Wood.
I think many people think the fact that the SEC chose to ask questions is a change in behavior. And therefore, I do think hopes are rising that or a number of Bitcoin ETFs will be approved.
So she's saying the same thing. Basically, the anecdotal evidence, how people are talking, is changing. But then she actually says that a number of ETFs are going to be approved for Bitcoin. And this could be a huge catalyst for us.
My understanding is the court now is going to issue a mandate about how to enforce their decision here to the SEC, and their SEC is going to basically follow that mandate. Everybody is assuming at this point that they'll probably approve most of the Bitcoin ETFs by the end of the year. Is that's a reasonable assumption at this point? They lost the court case. They chose not to appeal it at this point.
Right. And I do believe maybe the reason they're saying by the end of the year, early next year, I know our final deadline on this filing is January 10th. And so, and I think we're first in line. But as you say, a number of Bitcoin ETFs could be approved at the same time.
Now,
and one person behind one of these ETFs is Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, and he's shilling but not shilling in like a way to talk about Bitcoin, but not really talk about Bitcoin.
Can you talk about where crypto fits?
Well, I can't talk about Bitcoin because we have a filing with the SEC, so I'm prohibited. I could talk about crypto in general, and I could talk about what we have done.
That's smooth, buddy. That was really smooth. Like, I like you, but I don't like you, but you know I like you. You know, so it really comes down to the SEC, whether or not they're here for protecting investors' interests, or are they owned by much bigger whales and players and really not interested in protecting anyone but themselves.
The FTX case, how does the SEC miss something so detrimental to the average investor? Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I think it's because the SEC at the end of the day doesn't care about the retail investor in the way it claims to.
Yep.
So let's take a closer look at that. If the SEC really cared about the little guy, why would it have knives out for crypto, which is the most democratic, retail-driven financial movement in the history of the world?
I don't know who that guy is, but he said that crypto is the most democratic financial movement in the entire world. I just happen to agree with that beautiful sentence.
And if the SEC really cared about the little guy, why would it attack the on-ramps retail uses to access this economy? Why would it concentrate so much of its legal firepower in blocking a spot Bitcoin ETF? I mean, it just doesn't really add up. And so people always ask, you know, what's crypto's use case? I always tell them it has many, but perhaps the greatest use case that crypto has shown to have so far is exposing the SEC for what it really is. I mean, thanks to the SEC's vendetta against crypto, the American people are starting to see this three-letter agency for what it really is, which is an agency that more or less has been hijacked by corporate interests.
Have you ever just had a girl just look you in your eye and tell you, you're just an ugly person? I don't even like you one bit. Just me? Just not you? That's what happened here, okay? This is calling a spade for a spade. We map the actions and not the words, and the SEC protects nobody but itself and its own people who are its handlers who own the SEC and Gary Gensler. They do nothing for nobody for no good reason except for make money for their own owners. Anyway, what a great way to end the show.